Hi, Edge Teens, and any parents who might be watching with us. I'm sorry that we cannot be together this weekend. I hope that you all are doing well and staying healthy and hopefully enjoying some time together. But I do want to continue the conversation that we've started. We've been talking about several of the Ten Commandments, and this Sunday our plan was to talk about the 10th commandment. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. In other words, don't be super jealous of what your friends have or what your neighbors have or want their stuff. So basically, we're going to kind of break down this commandment and look at what it really means practically for all of you. So we all have material possessions. We all have things that we need, like shelter, water, food, clothing, right? But then we also have some things maybe that we don't need. And having a couple extra things is good and it's nice, but sometimes the things that we want and need can get kind of confused, and sometimes we can obsess over things that we don't have. And that can start breeding some really unhealthy desires in our life. So when we're not obeying the 10th commandment, it can lead to three different things: greed, avarice, and envy. So the first one is greed. Greed is when we have no limit to what we want. We always want more. Enough is never enough. So that could be like filling your closet with more and more clothes. You might have more than enough clothes, but yet you keep shopping, and yet you always want the newest, latest trend or more sneakers or whatever it is for you. So for others of you, it might be video games. You have a sufficient amount, but you always want more. The second one is avarice. So that's the desire for riches and the power that comes with the riches. So we know in our society that sometimes wealth can breed power, that it can allow you to have more influence over other people in an unhealthy way. And oftentimes people who are dealing with avarice, they don't care what they have to do to achieve that money and that power. They'll go to any ends to get it. They don't care who they hurt or what compromises they have to make in their morals or in their choices to get where they want to be. The last one is envy. And that's the sadness that we feel when we don't have something that we want, or when we don't have something that someone else has. So that can happen a lot with kind of the comparison game. Your friend's house has an indoor pool. Everybody but you has an iPhone. You can kind of say to yourself, hey, I'd really like to have an iPhone. Sure, I get that. But when it breeds sadness and kind of an obsession, that's when it becomes envy and it becomes really unhealthy. So things in and of themselves aren't bad. It's when we let them get to the extreme of greed, avarice, and envy that we have to be careful. There's nothing wrong with working hard and earning money. There's nothing wrong with working hard and earning money so that you can save up to go to college or buy a car or live in a house in a safe neighborhood. That's all fine and good. That's using money and material possessions to safeguard a healthy life. It's not about power or what other people think or about influence or just having more. And you're not feeding your feelings, you're feeding your needs, the things that you need to do and the things that you need to accomplish. So when we think about our desire for stuff can become really unhealthy in a lot of different ways. So in one way, sometimes we might want more stuff because we think it will make us more popular. It becomes more about our image and kind of the masks that we wear. What people think about us is why we want more stuff. And when we get into this game of our image and keeping up with the Joneses, right? Really unhealthy things can come of that, such as bullying. So bullies sometimes will, they don't feel like they fit in or they don't have what everybody else has, so they take it. That's when, unfortunately, sometimes there's some violence to get somebody's sneakers or to tear down someone that maybe is perceived to have more power or wealth or influence. So we have to be careful, once again, if our possessions are all about popularity and power, or if it's breeding bullying or causing people to feel left out, that's not healthy. Sometimes it's part of gang culture. Sometimes people will steal just in order to feel like they fit in. So we don't want to be a part of a culture of stuff that's making people feel like they need to resort to bullying or stealing or lying in order to fit in or have what they need. So in the Gospel of Matthew, there's a story called The Rich Young Man. And in this story, the rich young man, who was probably a teenager, approached Jesus and said, "Lord, Lord, what do I need to do to inherit the kingdom of heaven?" And Jesus replies to him, you need to follow the scriptures and you need to follow the 10 Commandments. And this young man is so excited. He's like, "Lord, I have done all those things since my youth. I follow the 10 Commandments. I'm a good Jew. I know the scriptures." And then Jesus says, "Good. Now sell everything that you own and come and follow me." And then the scripture goes on to say, the young man turned and walked away because he had many possessions. And then the little antidote after that is that the Lord says to his disciples, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, what Jesus is saying here, he's not saying that rich people can't go to heaven or that people with money can't go to heaven. What Jesus saw in this young man was an unhealthy attachment to his possessions and his money. You've probably heard the phrase, you can't take it with you, right? At some point, we are all going to die, and we can't take all of our stuff with us. Our Switch games, our cool sneakers, whatever it is that we have acquired, it's going to stay here. We can't take it to heaven with us. And guess what? We won't care when we're in heaven. We won't care about any of that stuff. But the Lord is telling us we need to start practicing that desire for people and relationships ahead of things. We need to practice that desire now. So I think sometimes that's a good litmus test for us. Am I placing things before people? Am I going after things constantly that I want, or am I pursuing things that I need? And the Lord is telling us that as long as we keep material possessions in their rightful place, they won't interfere in our relationship with Him and our relationship with others. But we have to be careful. Because remember how we talked about concupiscence several weeks ago? That natural inclination that we have to sin? Yeah, once we have one pair of sneakers, all of a sudden we want two, then three, then four, right? So we need to keep that in check. So some of the things that we can do to help develop our conscience is ask ourselves those questions. Do I want this because of what other people will think about me if I have it? Do I want this because I need it? Do I want it because I want it? Right? And that can kind of help us make a good judgment on whether or not these possessions are good for us. We also have 3 things that can really help us combat greed, avarice, and envy. And those are grace, gratitude, and goals. The goal of heaven, more specifically. So the first one is grace. So we talked about concupiscence. We talked about this natural inclination to sin. What counteracts that is grace. And grace we receive in the sacraments. So every time we receive the Eucharist, we are filled with the Lord's grace. Every time we go to confession, we're filled with the Lord's grace. And that grace, that supernatural power from the Lord, will help us discern what we need and what we don't. It will help us discern, are my possessions overtaking my relationships? Are they in the wrong place? Gratitude. Gratitude is a great attitude to have, right? When we're grateful for what we have, all of a sudden we're not so worried about what everybody else has. Every single day we realize, gosh, like, I have a nice house. I have a good family. I'm healthy today. I have the opportunity to learn. I have the opportunity to play sports or learn a musical instrument. every single day, there is something for us to be grateful for. And when we have gratitude at the forefront, then all of those concerns about what other people think about us and what we have, they kind of fade away. And the last one is goals. So sometimes, regular life goals are good, like college or buying a car, those types of things, but also the goal of heaven. Remembering when we get obsessed over something we really want, if we stop and ask ourselves, is having this going to help me get to heaven? It's a good question to ask. I can't take it with me. So is all the time and energy and money and sadness or whatever I'm pouring into this thing that I want, is it misplaced? Is it misguided? Or is it actually something really good? Is it an opportunity for me to use my gifts and serve other people? If that's the case, that means it's helping you get to heaven. Go for it. So, challenges for us are to practice grace, or to receive grace by going to the sacraments, right? To practice gratitude and to keep the goal of heaven in mind. The more that we practice these things, the more that we're going to see the needs of others. We won't be so self-absorbed. We'll see that there are others who are less fortunate than us. Many of you have gone to the soup kitchen with us on the fourth Friday of every single month. I've been going for years, and I tell you what, it's a gut check. It's a soul check for me every single time that I go. No matter what kind of day I've had that day, when I go in there and I serve my neighbor food, that puts everything into perspective for me. When I get the chance to go to work camp in the summer, when I do iServe in the summer, when I drive certain places or walk certain places in Frederick, and I see people who actually don't have their needs being met, that really gives me some perspective. And if I'm filled with grace and with gratitude, if I'm walking with the Lord, my instinct, my inclination is going to be, how can I serve them? And that's what the Lord wanted for the rich young man. He wanted his eyes to see those who had less, those who needed more. And the rich young man couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He was too turned in on himself to be able to see the needs of others. So don't be blind to the needs of others, especially, right now, we're going through 2 weeks of having no school. There is a virus outbreak, something that many of us have never experienced in our lifetime. And you may have some neighbors who are home alone all day because their parents have to work. You may have some neighbors who rely upon free school lunches and who are hungry. You may have people who are lonely because they haven't seen anybody for days. This is time for us to reach out and care for our neighbor in a safe way, of course, right? But let's be aware of what's going on around us and maybe get our priorities a little bit straight. I hope that you all continue to enjoy your Lent. I am going to attach in the email what your challenge is for this week. I'm happy to share that the Rise Up rally that we were supposed to attend on March 22nd has been rescheduled for June 7th. I will have more details about that. And I just hope that you guys continue to have a prayerful Lent and that you all stay healthy and safe. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.